everyone, Ellie here, and today we are going to start working on my hero Rey costume. I'm so excited about this costume. I've been working on it since December when The Last Jedi first came out. I absolutely loved the movie, and I absolutely love Rey's character development as well. I'm going to be making this costume alongside with a Kylo Ren costume that I'm making for my husband, so you can expect to see progress for that as well. These costumes will probably take quite a while, so strap in, buckle up, and let's get ready to go. Working on a costume right after a movie comes out is sometimes really intimidating. You don't have HD stills yet, you can't go through and look frame by frame to see what the costume is doing, so you really have to go off your memory and other people's hard work. The Rey cosplay community on Facebook has been a huge resource for me while I'm making this costume. Not only is everyone extremely friendly, but they all make great costumes and share wonderful resources. Also, just recently, the Rebel Legion standards for Rey were released, so I'm able to go off those a little bit more now that I'm still working on this costume. Today, we are going to start by working on Rey's pants. I bought this beautiful gray twill / suiting for her pants that I got actually at Walmart. It was really cheap, but it's quite beautiful. So I've already drafted my pattern and I am ready to get sewing. Let's begin. If you've been watching my videos before, I'm sure you all know that the first thing we do is we trace out our pattern and then we cut it out. I'm making sure to include all of my darts and also which part of the pants this is, since her pants are divided into lots of itty bitty pieces. So I've been marking them all with either like an FT for front top or BT for back top, things like that. It helps me keep track of what part is what when I'm starting to put them together. Of course, never forget to cut out your material with seam allowance. I forget that all the time, and it can be a pain in the butt. So make sure you remember your seam allowance when you're cutting your materials. The first thing I need to do is put together my front piece and my back piece. The front of Rey's pants is divided into 3 pieces, the top, the knee, and the calf, whereas the back is just divided into the top and the calf. I'm going to be constructing these pants using flat felled seams, which is what is normally used when you're constructing jeans or things like that. To make a flat felled seam, you start with the right sides of the fabric together. Rather than lining them up perfectly, you make sure that the top is slightly smaller than the bottom fabric. Once your materials are positioned correctly, you can take the extra material on the bottom piece of fabric and fold it over the top piece of fabric. We're going to pin along this whole seam and then we will run a stitch over it. Once you have the first part of the seam completed, you'll notice that there is a flap of fabric hanging around. We're going to press that and then top stitch it onto the backing fabric. Now that we have this seam finished, we're going to add 2 darts along the sides of the knee. And after that, we are going to begin attaching the bottom of the front of our pants. That is a bit of a mouthful. We're going to be using a flat felt seam, and it is a lot easier to see when it's on a flat seam like this. So let's take a look and see how this is done. After we fold and stitch the top edge, we are going to press the extra material, fold it, and then top stitch it just like before. I absolutely love the look of flat felt seams. I think they look really professional and very clean. So now we need to attach the front and back pieces. This is again going to be done with a flat felt seam, just to make sure that everything is uniform and looks very clean. I'm going to make sure that I match up the seam around the back of the knee along with the one that goes around the top of the knee, just to make it look very continuous. Just like before, we're going to stitch the seam, flip it, and then stitch it again. I highly suggest that if you're doing a lot of flat felled seams, You write down what part of your presser foot you're using as a guide, just so that way you remember it and all your top stitching is perfectly even. I'm using the far right edge of my presser foot as a guide along my seam to make sure that my top stitches are right where they need to be. Now that we've finished one side seam, it's time to tackle the other. Just like the other side, I want to make sure that both of the seams around my knee match up, and I'm going to be using a flat felled seam to create this. The side seam is one of the hardest seams to do a flat fell on. This is because the closer you get to the ankle, the skinnier the pant leg becomes, and it becomes harder to get that to fit underneath your presser foot. It definitely takes a lot of time and patience while top stitching this. I also suggest that you're extra careful while creating this seam to make sure you don't get the other side of your pant leg caught up into it. After finishing up a few darts along the waistline, it was time to put our legs together. To do this, I put one inside the other with the right sides touching each other and did a flat felled seam around the curve of the crotch. This was the most difficult seam to do, just because it was very, very curvy and there was a lot of bulk in there as well. After finishing these pants with a bunch of flat felled seams, I have a lot more respect for people who make jeans all day. I don't think I could do it. I would probably go a little bit crazy. You might notice that as I'm stitching the seam, I'm also adjusting my fabric and making sure that it is folded over equal amounts and that everything is pressed together nicely. In an ideal world, the inside of my crease would be touching the edge of my smaller piece of fabric. So I'm trying to make sure that everything is laying nicely. With our two legs put together, it was now time to add the zipper. I'm using a nice metal zipper because I'd never used one before and I thought the look might fit the industrial look of most Star Wars costumes. Unfortunately, I couldn't find this zipper in a gray color, so I went with a nice light brown. And since we're going to be top stitching next to the zipper, I don't think you're going to be able to see it at all, so I'm not too concerned. Once the zipper is attached, we go ahead and top stitch around it, just to mimic the top stitch details of all of our flat felled seams. Unlike plastic zippers, you can't simply stitch over a metal zipper, as I unfortunately learned. I did break a few needles while doing this, so I for sure suggest that you are extra careful while you're stitching in your metal zipper, just so a needle doesn't break. With our zipper installed, it's now time to move on to the waistband. I simply cut a long strip of material that's about 2 inches wide and folded it over on itself a few times, just like I have for all of our other waistbands. I'm going to pin this around the waist of my pants, starting at the zipper, and once that's all pinned, we're going to stitch it into place. Once our waistband has been stitched onto our pants, we're going to flip it around so it is now all facing the right direction. At this point, we're going to make sure all the material is inside the waistband and pin along that lower ledge. Once we have this securely pinned, we're going to go ahead and top stitch this. In previous videos, I've shown the method stitch in the ditch for attaching waistbands, but we are going to go ahead and top stitch to mimic the look of a flat felt seam. Waistband all in place, all that's left is to add a closure for the waistband. Normally I would do this using a hook and bar. However, for this costume, I'm going to be using 3 very retro 80s buttons. I feel like these really fit the Star Wars aesthetic, especially since I believe that Rey found this outfit somewhere on the Millennium Falcon, so it has to be something really old that Han had forever ago. So the buttons would be mismatched and out of place. To make these buttonholes, I simply measure how wide our button is and I mark that onto our waistband. There are going to be 3 buttonholes, so I mark each of them individually. After that, it's time to take it over to my sewing machine. My sewing machine does have a buttonhole feature, which is amazing. It really completes the buttonhole for you, doing the forward stitch, the backward, the zigzag, all that good jazz. So really all you have to worry about is making sure that it is wide enough for your button. Once I've completed all of my buttonholes, I'm going to slice and open using a seam ripper. This is a great way to slice open buttonholes as long as you are careful and slow about it. After your buttonhole has been sliced open, make sure to go over it with a little bit of fray block so that way it doesn't fray everywhere as you take your buttons in and out. And with that, we are finished. Hi everyone, thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me as always. These pants were so much fun to make. I don't get to make a lot of pants. I usually prefer costumes with skirts or dresses, so this was a bit outside my comfort zone. But I really enjoyed being able to work with flat felt seams and figure out how to make them work for us and make a garment that is absolutely beautiful. I'm so happy with the way they turned out and can't wait to continue working on Rey and Kylo Ren. So I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please let me know with a comment, a thumbs up, a subscribe, anything like that. It really does mean the world to me, like I said. So thank you so much. May the force be with you. And as always, keep sewing, stay positive, and have fun. I will see you all next time.